The Nikon Z6 III is a truly fantastic full-frame camera that takes everything great from the Z8 and Z9, like internal RAW recording and great autofocus, and puts it into a smaller and more affordable body that also has a flip-out screen. Mild spoiler for how excited I am for this camera and what it means for filmmakers that use Nikon or are considering using Nikon. This video is an early review of the Z6 III from the perspective of a wedding filmmaker. So if you are someone that films weddings or you've been considering getting started filming weddings and you're looking for an entry-level full-frame camera that is still packed with features, this video is for you. Speaking of getting started filming weddings, I've put together a free workshop that's going to show you how to book your first wedding. So if you've been considering getting started and you're wondering how the heck you can book a couple to film and how you can turn this into a repeatable business that will give you more income over time, I highly recommend watching this free workshop. I will link to it down below. Also, for the sake of ethics, I want you to know this video is not paid or sponsored by Nikon, but they did loan me this camera with pre-production firmware for a few days so I could make this review, which is why I'm calling it an early review, because I'm sure there may be things that I missed, so please watch more than just my video if you are thinking about buying this camera. In addition, for full transparency, when Nikon sent me this camera, they also sent someone with the camera to chaperone it because they're very concerned about leaks, very secretive. So, in a few days, that person will be taking this camera back to Nikon with them. This camera chaperone has no input in what I'm saying in this review though, and neither them nor Nikon are seeing the script or the finished video before I upload it to YouTube. Now, let's get right into the review, starting with the body and the build. Just like with the Z8 and Z9, this camera is built like a tank. It feels very solid to hold, and it has some heft to it. But that said, the Z6 III is noticeably lighter in feel than those other two cameras. And this is really something that you want to keep in mind if you are a wedding filmmaker, because the heavier that your camera is, the more likely you are going to feel it on a long wedding day. Nothing against the Z8 and Z9, but when I tested them, I found my arms tired after a pretty short amount of time due to how large those cameras were, because I'm used to Sony, who makes full-frame cameras that are pretty lightweight in comparison. Thankfully, the Z6 III is more in line with Sony in regards to weight, and I think that that's a really good thing. This camera just has a good feel to it. Flip around the back, and here's where things start to get more interesting, because unlike the Z8 or Z9, which had a tilt screen, the Z6 III comes with a fully articulating flip-around screen. So if you're someone that needs to film at different angles, or see yourself while you're filming, etc., this is the camera that's going to easily enable you to do it. I really prefer a flip-out screen even for wedding filmmaking because I've lost count the amount of times that I've been in a cramped room and I need to put the camera into a weird position where I can look at the screen but still be filming it because there's a lot of bridesmaids and I'm like, kids gonna get this shot here, don't mind me. So, flippy screen, big win, and I think this brings the Z6 III in line with other cameras from other manufacturers, the majority of which also offer flip screens. Talking memory cards on the side here now, the Z6 III has dual memory card slots, with one of them being a CF Express Type B card slot, while the other is an SD card slot. This is not surprising considering the resolution and quality of the video that this camera is capable of recording, but what I do want to make you aware of is one of the biggest cons of the Z6 III in my opinion, and that is that this camera is not capable of recording video to dual memory card slots. If you want to record video with this camera, you are limited to using only one card slot, even though it has two card slots. To be clear, this is just a video limitation. The camera can save photos to both card slots. Now, as for why this is, I don't have an answer for you. I have asked Nikon and they have not been able to give me a reason why, but it's definitely an annoyance considering that all of their competitors that I can currently think of at the time of making this video that offer dual card slots in their cameras also allow you to record to both card slots when recording video. I feel like the argument could be made that because the camera records such high quality video, that's why it's not capable of dual recording to a slower SD card, but I would even take a workaround like other recent cameras have offered, where if you choose to record high quality video to the CF Express Type B card, the SD card will still record a lower resolution proxy video file, which is still Much better than nothing in the event that you have a card failure. To be clear, I don't think that having the ability to record to dual memory cards is an absolute necessity. I filmed weddings for years with a camera that only had one SD card slot, but I've talked before in other camera reviews that I believe that there is a baseline of features that most new cameras should be able to hit, and we are very quickly nearing the point where you have so many cameras that give you the option to dual record video that it makes it a bit harder to recommend a camera that does not. That said, I know that many filmmakers do not care about this feature nearly as much as I do, but I do want you to be aware of this limitation. Next, let's talk video quality and resolution, because this is an area where it really feels like there is no limitations. My goodness, the Z6 III really shines and competes directly with cameras that are significantly more expensive than it in this area. This is a brand new partially stacked full frame sensor that is capable of recording everything from 240 frames per second in full HD all the way up to 6K resolution at 60 frames per second, or 4K resolution up to 120 frames per second, but with a 1.5 times crop of the sensor. And here's where things get really great. The Z6 III can record these frame rates and resolutions in Nikon's in-RAW video codec, which is a very high quality RAW video file that enables you to adjust things like exposure and white balance after the fact, and really gives you a ton more control when color grading your image. This in-RAW codec is also natively supported in DaVinci Resolve, and can you tell that I love it? I really love it. It's one of my favorite RAW codecs that I've used. Of course, there's not just in RAW, you also have the option of recording in ProRes RAW as well, which is great to see more cameras support this flavor of RAW, even if it is not as supported by pro video editing softwares out there. Hopefully more support is coming in the future. I can dream. Please, Adobe. Please, Blackmagic. What are you doing? Side note though, ProRes RAW will only record in 6K at up to 30 FPS, not 60. So if you want 60 FPS in ProRes RAW, you're going to need to drop down to 4K. There's also regular non-RAW ProRes HQ support as well, but this maxes out at 5.4K at 30 frames per second, or you can drop the resolution down to 4K if you want 60 FPS in regular ProRes. So, as you can see, the Z6 III really gives you a ton of video features and capabilities that before this you could only get in the Z8 or Z9, with really the only loss being in the form of 2Ks of resolution, because this camera only records in 6K, not 8K. But do you really need 8K? To me, it feels like 6K is a much better middle ground, because you still get the benefit of being able to reframe your footage without losing quality if you're exporting in 4K, while also getting smaller files, because 8K is really overkill for a lot of projects. Now, with all this talk about frame rates and resolutions, etc., I do have one other con that I need to tell you about with this camera. And this is another perplexing con that is also applied to the Z8 and Z9. And I feel like this complaint is just like my complaint about none of these cameras being able to dual record to 2 slots at the same time, because it's just a weird limitation. The second con is that the Z6 III can only record for a maximum of 125 minutes in any video mode. So no matter whether you're recording in RAW or H.265, after 125 minutes, or 2 hours and 5 minutes if you want to do the math like that, the camera is going to stop recording and you're going to have to start it recording again. Why is this? Why does this weird limitation exist whenever most of Nikon's competition lets you record for an unlimited amount of time? I don't know. And they have not been able to tell me why either. Sorry. But what I will say is that this recording time is significantly better than the Panasonic S9, which had a maximum recording time of only 15 minutes. So at least Nikon is soundly beating them. Anyways, once Nikon told me that this camera would have the same 125-minute recording time limit that I experienced with the Z8 and Z9, my next question was, does this recording time limit really matter? And by that, I mean, is the camera battery actually going to last long enough for it to record for 2 hours and 5 minutes, or is it going to die before that happens? Which would then make this limitation a moot point, unless you're using a dummy battery to power the camera to have it record longer, or you're powering it via USB-C, or you have a dual battery grip that you're using with the camera. So let's talk battery life. I tested how long the Z6 III's battery would last by putting a full battery into the camera and having it record 6K in RAW at 24 frames per second. And with these settings, the camera recorded for approximately 2 hours before the battery finally died. So hey, if you're recording in 6K, the battery is going to get close to that 2 hour and 5 minute recording time limit, but it will probably die before you hit it. Unfortunately, I did not have time to test how long the battery would last filming lower resolutions or not in RAW, but the good news is that this battery life test also did double duty as an overheating test, because in this approximately 2 hours that the camera was recording 6K at 24 FPS in RAW, it never overheated. Pretty cool. Granted, this test was indoors in a 70-degree Fahrenheit room, and I know that while it's great that the camera didn't overheat indoors, a lot of weddings don't happen indoors, they happen outdoors. And I happen to live in Texas, one of the hottest states in America that we proudly brag about, I guess. It's brutal here, okay? We just stay inside in the air conditioning all the time. Well, Nikon chose to send me the Z6 III in the summer, so you better bet that I tested the overheating performance outdoors. Remember, the Z6 III does not have a fan, and it is a smaller body than the Z8 and Z9, so I did not have the highest hopes for overheating performance with this camera, but let me just say, I was pleasantly surprised. I took the Z6 III outside and set it up on a tripod where there was a mix of clouds and direct sunlight overhead beaming down directly onto the camera body. The temperature for this test was 94 degrees Fahrenheit, but I'll also note that my weather app said that it felt like 104 due to the humidity. So in short, it was a very, very hot day. Then, because I wanted this to be a real torture test to simulate filming outdoors on a wedding day, I set the camera to record in 6K at the maximum frame rate of 60 frames per second in log, because I really wanted to see if this camera would even make it 5 minutes. And come on, it's not like you're going to be filming a wedding ceremony at 6K 60 FPS. Some of you may try it. Please do not. Okay, film that at 24 FPS. Don't be a psychopath. But hey, you may be filming a lot of clips, 6K at 60 FPS, so it's still a good test, right? And it's exciting. You want to know the answer, right? You want to know how well it did. Hold on to your beard, because like I said, I was very surprised. I hit record, and the Z6 III recorded for approximately 22 minutes before a yellow thermometer appeared on the back of the screen, indicating that the camera was getting hot, but it kept recording. Then, 4 minutes later, the thermometer turned red, indicating that the camera was getting even hotter, but it still kept recording. 6 minutes after that, the word high appeared next to the thermometer, indicating that the camera was now extremely hot, but it still kept recording. It just didn't stop. Even with the red thermometer warning me that the camera was very close to overheating, the Z6 III just kept recording. And this was so different from my experience with other cameras overheating. Usually once you see that overheat warning on like a Sony camera, good luck. You got 30 seconds to a minute before that puppy is completely cooked. Sorry, that's just how it is. And don't get me started on the first firmware for the Canon R5, because that was a nightmare. And you can just look up the drama with that if you want to, okay? We don't talk about the R5 overheating. Back to the Z6 III, I'm so excited to tell you that this camera recorded for 53 minutes and 7 seconds in 6K 60 FPS RAW on what is essentially the surface of the sun, aka where I live in Texas, before the camera finally overheated. And I'm really impressed by that time. Now, I have not had time to test other frame rates and resolutions, but considering how much heat is generated by filming something at this resolution and frame rate, it gives me a lot of hope for how this camera will record filming in lower frame rates and resolutions, and I feel pretty confident in recommending the Z6 III if you want to use it to film a wedding. You will not need to worry about overheating. Going back to the features and capabilities that you get from the Z8 and Z9 that are now in the Z6 III, we also have to talk about autofocus, because you get essentially the same autofocus system from those two cameras in this one for way less money. Tracking is fast and accurate, the eye autofocus works great, and I'm really happy with what Nikon has done here. If you want to know the specific autofocus settings that I recommend, I'm actually working on a second video about that, and it'll be out very soon, and I will link to it up in the corner and down in the video description. Lowlight is another area where this camera does quite well too. This is a new sensor. It's not like how the Z8 was essentially the same sensor from the Z9. This sensor is completely new, and when I tested it, I was able to see that it appears to be a dual ISO sensor, meaning that it looks clean at 2 different ISOs. When filming an in-log, the sensor looks cleanest at the base ISO of 800, and then again when you hit the second base ISO of 6400. So if you stick to those 2 ISOs, the camera's going to look its cleanest, but I'm happy to also say that if you want to increase increase the ISO even higher, the Z6 III will go all the way up to ISO 51,200, although I would not recommend it because it gets quite noisy. Instead, if you do need to increase the ISO, I would feel comfortable using it up to about ISO 16,000 before it gets too noisy. So I still think that the Z6 III is quite usable for wedding filmmaking, and even at a dark wedding reception, you should have no issues with noise in your video, even if you have to crank that ISO up pretty darn high. In-body image stabilization is another feature that Nikon has put from the Z8 and Z9 into this camera, and in my experience, it works well. It's on par with, I would say, the A7S III's active stabilization, which is good, but not anywhere near close to the magic stabilization that you get from something like the Panasonic GH7. So what I'm saying is don't throw away your gimbal with the Z6 III. You're still going to want it for moving shots, but for handheld stuff, IBIS works great. Now, another area that Nikon has made an upgrade to the Z6 III is in the area of audio, with the Z6 III now supporting line-in 24-bit audio internally. While this is good to see because I'm a big fan of improved audio quality in any camera, I can't help but feel that the recent announcement of the Panasonic GH7 with its capability of recording internal 32-bit float audio has taken a bit of the wind out of the Z6 III's 24-bit audio sails, as it were. Because 32-bit float gives you dramatically more control over adjusting the volume of your audio in post and can really help you from losing your audio if it's too quiet or too loud and peaking. Yes, you have to purchase a separate accessory for the GH7 to enable it to record internal 32-bit float, but that's still a massive upgrade over 24-bit float, and I'm really hoping that for the Z6 IV, for example, hopefully in a few years, we will see internal 32-bit float audio. Heck, I want 32-bit float internal recording in all cameras, from all manufacturers, okay? Just make that happen across the board. It's amazing. Let's do it, okay? Also, let's talk picture profiles and dynamic range now. One of Nikon's competitors, Panasonic, has been making some huge strides in the area of picture profiles and LUT support in their cameras, with cameras like the S9 and GH7 supporting 39 custom LUTs, plus giving you an ecosystem of tools that you can use to create and customize those LUTs in camera. The Z6 III unfortunately does not go nearly as far as those cameras and actually doesn't support LUTs at all internally. Bummer. Aside from a view assist feature, which will add some contrast and saturation to your preview of footage that you have filmed in InLog on the back of the camera, there is no other LUT support to speak of, which is a bummer, and I hope that Nikon expands on their LUT support in the future. Come on, be competitive with Panasonic, okay? And while we're talking here, I want Sony to be competitive with Panasonic. I want all cameras to have 32-bit float audio and amazing LUT support. Let's just do that across the board for everything, okay? We're all going to benefit from it. Thankfully, in the area of dynamic range, I'm happy to tell you that while I have not done any scientific tests with a Xyla chart or anything like that, the Z6 III is, to my eye, no slouch in the dynamic range department. And whenever I tested filming in Nikon's InLog format, I found that I had plenty of detail in my highlights and in my shadows, and I know that I've talked about InRAW a lot in this video, but filming all of your footage in that is really the icing on the cake because you have so much latitude to save details in your highlights and shadows, and the amount of leeway that you have to adjust the colors in this camera when filming in log and in RAW is really impressive. The colors look so gorgeous. My goodness. So I think it's fantastic to see Nikon take many of the great features of their Z8 and Z9 cameras and put them into the Z6 III, which is significantly cheaper and very competitive with other cameras in its price range. For $2,500, you're getting a fantastic full-frame camera with stellar autofocus that also records internal RAW, which, as I said earlier, and I will say again, I love the InRAW video format, and I think that once you film in RAW with this camera, it's something that you're going to want to do all the time. And hey, in case you missed the news, Nikon did buy Red, the camera company, which means that you do not have to worry about them getting sued for using internal RAW in this camera. Nope, Nikon just bought Red, so they wouldn't have to deal with that legal fight anymore. Crazy, crazy news. I have a whole video about it. I'll link it up in the corner down in the video description. Speaking of crazy, it's also still crazy to me that Nikon does not support recording video to dual memory cards in this camera. That is really the biggest con that I can think of with the Z6 III, and I would totally understand if that's a deal breaker for you. If it's not, though, and you're fine with recording video to one memory card slot, which I know that many people still are, then in that case, you are going to love the Z6 III because it is one of the best bang for your buck full-frame cameras that you can buy today. With that, thanks so much for watching. If you're a wedding filmmaker or you are considering getting started filming weddings, but you are struggling with booking a couple to film, I want you to know that I've put together a workshop that will show you how to book your next wedding. You can watch this workshop completely for free at the link down in the video description. Thanks so much for watching and have a great day.